Art, Life, and the Law. Part 2 of the Gerry Spence interview, next on Wyoming Chronicle. Hello, I'm Richard Ager. Welcome to Wyoming Chronicle and part 2 of our interview with Gerry Spence. He's known as the lawyer who never lost a criminal case. His high-profile clients include Randy Weaver of Ruby Ridge, Imelda Marcos, and Karen Silkwood's family. Time magazine called him the fastest gun in the West. Born and raised in Laramie with a law degree from UW, Gerry Spence has always made Wyoming his home, but his work and his legacy is for the nation. Gerry Spence began his public life in 1954, running for Fremont County Attorney. It had its risks, including an attempt on his life. But Spence carried on, prosecuting those who broke the law. Spence was on his way, moving his law office to bigger digs. His only loss? In a race to be Wyoming's congressman. But in the midst of success, he left it all behind. He put everything up for sale and moved to San Francisco to study painting. San Francisco didn't last, though Spence still paints. Most important, following his artistic impulse led him to greater achievements in the law and a new focus on defending the little guy. It is a life lesson he imparts to classes at the trial lawyers college he founded in Du Bois in 1994.
So today, what are we going to do? We are going to paint. Well, what do you know? What does that have to do with being a trial lawyer? Every presentation that you make to the jury has its counterpart in a painting. It has a beginning and it has an end. It has content. It has contrast. It has form. It has beauty. That's what your presentation to the jury contains. It contains you. So there's plenty of paint and there's plenty of paper. Go do it.
I feel very inadequate right now.
I've been practicing 30 years, so I have a lot of things I have to learn to undo before I can start on a new palette.
Like what?
Just to be more real. I get so passionate about my clients that sometimes I want to take somebody's head off on cross-exam, so I'm trying to learn how to love the other side.
Painting for the first time since childhood is just one step in breaking down internal barriers.
Shady Ray Foreman.
The first 3 days of the 3-week course are spent in psychodrama.
I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thanks, Daddy. To be a good trial lawyer, you should be able to reverse roles with your client. In other words, this isn't not a new concept, but it's to walk in another person's shoes.
You know, when you do the psychodrama, when you get up and sing, when you interact with people you don't know, these are all my brothers and sisters, I feel, you know? I feel very close to them, so I don't know, it's tough to describe what Gerry's bringing out in me, but I like it. From where I was at, I feel like I've come a long way, you know?
They don't just start with doing lawyering techniques, they're actually asked to look at themselves and their own methods that keep them away from understanding people.
And what better place for self-examination than at Thunderhead Ranch in the mountains east of Du Bois. When participants come to the Trial Lawyers College, they leave the outside world behind, literally. There's no TV, no internet, and if you really must place a cell phone call, your only choice is to come climb Cell Phone Hill. There is plenty of instruction on the art of opening statements, cross-examinations, and closing arguments, but here it all starts with a focus on the person before the law, as in this hypothetical injury case.
And I want justice for you, Kelly. And I want you to use your power, not only to give it to her, but to give it to every other honest woman and every other honest man who comes into a court and stands before her peers or his peers and tells you the truth and asks you for justice. Thank you.
Was in the spring, spring became the summer. Who'd have believed you'd come along?
I think when you just be real with the jury, and I think if you just be yourself and you grounded and you show them a little bit of yourself, and maybe they'll show you a little bit of themselves.
So after leading a rousing chorus of Sweet Caroline and painting a couple of paintings, what difference do you feel?
I feel a little freer and a little bit lighter, and I don't need to take myself as seriously as I think we all take ourselves far too often.
Sweet Caroline, good times never seem so good. So good.
Now, you have argued many cases, so statistically speaking, if nothing else, odds are not all of your clients were innocent. Just going by the odds. Does that matter to you?
Well, you are a very complicated man and a very well developed personality who asks a very simplistic question. And the simplistic question is one that many people ask, almost everybody asks. How do you represent somebody who is guilty? Or are all your clients innocent? And the answer is, all of my clients are human beings, and they're much like me. And so whether they are guilty of a violation of a particular law is one thing. But are they guilty of being? Are they guilty from the under the circumstances of this case, so that they ought to be put in prison? But even more important may be the other question: why didn't we ask that? Was the prosecution guilty of anything that it did in that case? Does that case present for us an opportunity to look at how the prosecution is dealing with people, guilty or innocent, to convict them wrongfully? So I think that before we can become successful trial lawyers, we have to become people, have to become human beings.
Which brings us to the college, I think.
That's right.
I'd like to start by asking, who are your students here?
They come from every place. They are prosecutors, but wait a minute. They are not prosecutors. We have no prosecutors, we have no corporate representatives, we have nobody that represents government, we have nobody that represents corporations, they represent only people, only people. So they are public defenders, poor, paid public defenders, wonderful people who are laying it all down and with all of their hearts and their souls for people the best that they can, and they don't know how to do it.
This is a quote from you. The approach that we teach here is so simple, it's sometimes difficult for lawyers locked in their left brain loads to understand. So do you sometimes feel like a deprogrammer?
Yes.
So that's the approach you would take?
Sure. When a kid gets out of law school, he has been totally used up by the system. That is, he's paid them the money to become a lawyer, and what they've done is destroyed him as a human being. He can't feel. He doesn't know anything about being real. He tries to emulate other lawyers. He's never been trained on how to try a case. He can't communicate with people. He can't communicate with his family. He is a total lost human being.
And he's 200 grand in debt.
And 200, thank you, yes, and 200 grand in debt. So that's the phony stuff that's going on in this country. When they come here, we put them through psychodrama. Don't ask me what that is. Because but it's a process by which people have an opportunity to get in touch with who they really are. And they learn that they're all right. And they learn that down today we were painting, as you may have noticed. And some people got up there today and wept about their paintings because they'd never painted. They didn't know that they were, and they became little children, some of them. And for us to be able to communicate successfully to other people, we have to be a person ourselves.
You know, there's an old saying, you know, first impressions are the most important. So I guess you're priming people here to make a first impression.
No, I'm not priming them to make a first impression. Mm-hmm. I'm priming them to be real. And that the jury may not attach themselves to that person immediately, but as a first impression. But along the way, before it goes too far, they'll find that they feel more comfortable with this person than with that person. There is some kind of underlying language going on between ordinary people and somebody who is real that they hear. It's not very complicated. It's just complicated to do.
I've sometimes heard the metaphor of courtship, in which the attorney courts the jury, but
I don't think that's not what we do. It's not a courting proposition. Because that's phony. What we're trying to do is teach people that it's okay to be who they are and to be real. And if people will do that, they will begin to win cases.
And this must reflect on your personal experience too. When you argue cases, you just didn't use big words. You just yourself, right?
I try to be who I am. Yes.
You know, one other thing that you said that is done here at the college is the practice of trying to crawl inside. This is a quote: "inside the hide of our adversaries." Can you enlarge on that a little?
Well, we talk about, I mentioned psychodrama. One of the things we teach in psychodrama is to reverse roles with the other person. Oftentimes we're reversing roles with our parents. If I become my parent, I might understand my parent a little better, and I might be able to have a better life. If I crawled inside the hide of my child, maybe that relationship would be better. I could see me through the eyes of my child. What a revelation. So we teach role reversal and that's an experience that these folks have in psychodrama. And if you could reverse roles with your opponent, with the reverse roles with the juror, with the witness on the stand, a magic happens. Because most of us believe that the whole world revolves around us, and in fact it does begin with us. But I can't reverse roles unless I've already been with me, and in the process of reversing roles and becoming you, some magic is going to happen.
Sounds very much like a theater exercise.
Well, it isn't theatrical, but in a theater atmosphere, the actor, the protagonist, tries to become that person, and it's a necessary part in order to present that person's character accurately, but I want to disabuse any idea that we act, because I think that leaves the wrong impression. Acting and being who we are two different things.
Well, many theater exercises are aimed at the same result.
Yes, that's true.
To get to the core.
Exactly.
I'd like to just talk about the sort of the balance of the exercises and instruction that is held here, because what we witnessed today was the painting, some of the poetry, singing, but obviously there's practical courtroom instruction involved as well. What's the rough balance there?
Well, you just saw one day out of 3 weeks. So the afternoon now, as we talk, these people are out working on trial techniques, on elements of the trial, opening statements, closing statements, selection of juries, final arguments, that sort of thing. They're in different rooms doing that. And we spend most of our time doing that, but we have to have this foundation first, because we're going to cross-examine based upon the way we've taught. We're going to do everything in the courtroom, in every element of down to the final argument, or even in the selection of the jury, based upon this idea that we've discussed.
About the ranch, because we're here in the beautiful mountains, beautiful location. I'm wondering, is the isolation of this place crucial to the experience?
I think so. Yeah, we're not where they have to go way up on the hill to talk home, and they don't have television, and they don't have the ready internet, and they are stuck with themselves, with their roommate, and with the people that are here that they live with every day, and it's life-changing.
I've read some of your blogs. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of what you've been talking about more recently, actually. There was one thing that you had said actually on the state of the law and our judges. And you said the function of the law, quote, is not to provide justice or to preserve freedom. The function of the law is to keep those who hold power in power.
Yep, that's exactly how the law works today. That's exactly how it works. In effect, it has worked that way almost from the beginning. And it is a myth. The myth is that there is liberty and justice for all. And there is liberty and justice if you know the right people and have the right amount of money to buy the right kind of lawyer, and you might be able to get a little liberty and a little justice under those circumstances if it's due to you. But if it's otherwise, one day you wake up and you have to face this thing called the American justice system, and you think, well, this is going to, I'm presumed innocent, and they have to prove their case to me against me beyond a reasonable doubt, and there's liberty and justice for all, and suddenly you're faced with the proposition that this is all a wild kind of empty story that the people have been fed.
Is that to say that you have given up on the American Republic, or are you actually more hopeful than that?
Well, as you can see, I'm dedicating my life to try to train lawyers to deal with that proposition. One of the big problems with the law is that the law schools aren't producing lawyers that know anything. All they can do is to pay $50,000 a year.
Another blog, and this was your thoughts on how to become free, which you posted about a year ago. You saying, this is a quote again, most slaves do not recognize their bondage. Most believe they are free because, in fact, as workers, they have the freedom to move from one slave master to another. I hear the echoes of Karl Marx. I'm not sure.
Colonel who?
Karl Marx.
Oh, Karl Marx.
I could almost say workers of the world unite.
Well, I'm not a student of Karl Marx. I'm a student of the legal system that I know, and the system that I have spent 83 years in. And as you sit there asking me questions, you know that you are not free. You are only free to go see if you can find another slave master who will hire you and take your life and pay you what little they can pay you, as little as they can possibly pay you. And if they can take every nickel from you and get the same service, they will do that for you, against you. That doesn't mean that we ought to be a Marxist society, but it does mean that we have to be aware of the myths that we have in this society. To tell people that we're free is to misrepresent to them.
Well, using that same language then, how would you classify yourself as a runaway slave?
Well, I never really became a slave, but I'm a slave to the system. I try to work out on the very edge of the system where the good can be done, and movement can be made, but. One of the things that means more to me than anything is that I be able to get up in the morning and decide what I am going to do with my life. But guess what? A judge will tell me. Or a prosecutor will file a motion and tell me that I have to respond to it. Or an insurance company will hire its lawyers to come in and file a series of stuff in a case that will absorb and take my life from me. So the answer is that none of us are really free.
Are you still taking cases?
Occasionally.
What keeps you desiring to do that? Just keep it in the practice?
Well, I don't know what else to do.
Well, you've got a college going here. There's another, actually, subject which you wrote 3 blogs about, which I found quite interesting. That was the value of rejection.
Absolutely. If I hadn't have been rejected, I don't know what would have happened to me. Suppose I'd become a sweetheart fraternity boy. I would have ended up maybe loving bankers and spending my time on the golf course.
Well, you could have become Speaker of the Wyoming House.
Pardon?
You could have become Speaker of the Wyoming House.
I could have, yes. What would have happened to me if I had become a judge or a professor? Can you imagine what would have happened to Gerry Spence as with all of his intellectual kind of ilk that filled the law schools? I would have gone crazy. And suppose I'd have been a judge, they would have probably impeached me within the first 2 years. So every time I was rejected, I felt rejected. But every time that I was rejected, it was such a gift to me. And I didn't know it.
At the time.
At the time.
And this place and the students that it has served over the years, would you say that this is your legacy?
Well, I hope it's part of it.
Well, I'm going to close with asking if you know any good lawyer jokes.
I really don't. I know some really bad jokes that you wouldn't want to hear. But lawyer jokes, you know, have a function. They are to create a despise in the people. You know, it's a kind of, humor is a real weapon, can be a real weapon. And lawyer jokes over the years have been used to make the people of the country despise their own warriors. If the only person that I can get to who will represent me when the state is after me is a lawyer who everybody makes fun of and are held up as sleazebags. But who holds us up as sleazebags? It's the corporate power structure. Because if we were seen with the dignity and the power that we really should have in representing ordinary people, corporate America would be in trouble.
You know, I kind of thought you would say that. Gerry Spence, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you.
All right.